So I've been trying to follow as much news as I can to have a look to see, or at least keep track of, if these tariffs are going to come in and affect sort of the UK. How much are they going to be? Originally, I had been thinking that it was only going to be a 10% tariff. No. Um, Apparently, I was even wrong on that. It's now going to be a 20% tariff across the board from all countries importing into the United States, and a 60% one on China. That hasn't changed, at least. So it's now a 20% tariff change. And ultimately, it will depend on what probably crazy person Donald Trump is going to be. If you've been following along with all the news coming out over the past couple of days of who Trump's going to appoint, like, RFK Jr., he's actually going to go ahead and put that guy in, or try and give him roles, to govern America's, health and food regimes. It's going to be a disaster. Generally, it's going to be a disaster. This guy is anti-vaccine, and yet would propose is pursuing a proposal that could lead to the need to redistribute the polio vaccine in America if you have a polio outbreak, because everyone in America is going to have to be vaccinated, and probably not everyone in America. You'll probably potentially, depending how big the outbreak is, maybe have to do a complete and utter revaccination of the world. And yet, remember, RFK Jr. against vaccines. And it's not just him, of course. There are another couple of clowns that Trump is trying to sort of get in, but they are all extremists, all extreme, all very loyal to Trump. So we'll see what happens. But this came out about what is going on with these tariffs. And so far, from what we can hear, is that his allies are now trying to lay the groundwork for these tariffs, because they know there's going to be problems trying to implement them, or at least sell them to the American people. And of course, once you do implement those tariffs, there will be consequences. How then do you try and smooth this over? And so far, they're trying to, at least from what I can at least see from some of the articles and seeing other people talk about it, is that they are going to try and sell it as, oh, this is just a short-term bump. These tariffs have come in, just a short-term bump. Don't worry about it. So we'll see what happens, but oh boy, this is going to be bad. This is really going to be bad, and especially you link these comments with one of the Trump trade people saying, basically trying to bully the UK into accepting a free trade deal with America. I've been saying it for the last couple of weeks now, but the Trump has pretty much ended Brexit. He's fundamentally ended Brexit in a lot of ways, or at least the beginning of the end of Brexit for a lot of reasons. But anyway, back onto this. So today we're going to go over this, but before we do that, like I say, links down below. Patreon page, the Buy Me Coffee link, where you can buy me coffee. Those links are down below. There's the Patreon page as well. There's the YouTube Pony Club as well that you can join, and of course, there's a YouTube thank you button down below as well. So let's crack on then into this, coming from Politico. Litzinger and his key allies now lay groundwork for Trump's massive new tariffs. Totally massive tariffs. So President-elect Donald Trump's now former chief aide and those close to him are now preparing to aggressively sell their plans for massive new tariffs on imports that will go far beyond anything seen in Trump's first term. So I think it is pretty clear that there are going to be tariffs, that tariffs are going to happen. How they are going to play out is still a mystery. But once again, you get an idea from here, potentially what these tariffs could look like. So Robert Lighthizer, a very gruff now Ohio trade lawyer, and his allies have been now making circulating memos, not only amongst themselves, but preparing now to convince lawmakers that the public and their plans are now dramatically higher tariffs will energize the economy instead of tanking it. according now to a document viewed by Politico, provided by a person close to the policy planning. Because if you've been listening to a lot of economists coming out, and they've said, look, if Trump introduces these tariffs, it could tank the economy. So now these guys have now going to go on their own offensive to show, oh, don't you see? We were right. Our way, these tariffs, all these trade experts, they were wrong, but we were right. So advisors of this goes to Litzinger and, of course, the Trump transition also have been talking to key lawmakers and congressional staff about how Congress might even take a role in imposing now the incoming administration tariffs plans through legislation, an action that would now significantly break from the mainstream economic policymaking embraced by both parties for decades. But it would now also prevent the tariffs from being unilaterally revoked by a future president. Which, again, as you can see, would cause a huge problem, because if these tariffs have come in, if Congress approves these plans, like it says, 20% tariff, that means to get rid of these tariffs, a future president has to take these plans through Congress. And it is how likely will it be then that a Democrat has control of Congress to then get rid of these tariffs? Now, of course, if these tariffs do show that, yes, there is, absolute economic devastation that these tariffs are causing, maybe that will just not be an issue for any future president who wants to remove these tariffs. If that is the case, I don't think they will have a problem. However, if you are a Democratic president and you do not have a majority in Congress, good luck getting these tariffs removed. So the economic justification for tariffs could be, of course, released by Trump and his allies in the coming weeks, said the person. And they will show the failures of the economic models to accurately now predict changes to the economy. As the result of tariffs, Trump's proposals would also aim to promote domestic manufacturing and lessen reliance on foreign countries. These would include universal tariffs of up to 20% on all goods coming into the US. 20%. So bear in mind, previously, we had heard 10. And now, according to this, it's now 20% across the tariff. And of course, a 60% tariff on all imports coming from China. So 60 for China, 20 for everyone else. Of course, what if we don't accept that US free trade deal? What if that 20% becomes 30%? Hey, if Trump has threatened retribution, or, what then happens then? Thank you for pushing us ever closer to the EU. If Trump decides to go ahead with that, and to be honest, given his personality and his vindictive nature, that could very well possibly happen. So, traditional, of course, economic models assume that tariffs can never stimulate domestic production. The circulated document reads, however, they say that when the US and the International Trade Commission studied the Trump tariffs, they found that domestic production increased in every single industry, as a result in now the real economy that all these models assumed could never happen. Again, I don't think it's true. While steel production in the US did increase, didn't exactly have a massive boom either, because these steel industries were now having to fulfill more orders domestically, which meant they had to increase production. But guess what? There weren't enough domestic steel production to be able to fill that. So guess what? They had to continue importing. Anyway, these, of course, discussions and, of course, do redeem efforts to try and counter all the criticism of the signal, even now a greater shakeup on trade that would define the Trump second term. And I think that's even interesting, that there may be even other stuff that could go ahead. Maybe not just tariffs. There could be something else that could come along with this as well. But it's what that is going to be, and we do not know. So Litzinger's is now ideologically driven to try and reorder the global trade system, has now gained the level of acceptance among Republicans not seen during the first term. Congress, of course, which is constitutional judicial over these trade matters, has not imposed any tariffs in almost 100 years. Instead, it has now granted the president the powers to do so under extraordinary circumstances through decades-old law. However, together, these developments do underscore how Litzinger, and one of the few Trump 1.0 figures still in the good graces of the president-elect and the congressional Democrats, is expected to play now a central role on the economy in Trump's term. However, he did not respond to comment. Litzinger does speak to Trump very regularly on trade and has been working for months to hone not only his campaign rhetoric on tariffs, but also the policy planning behind the scenes. Despite the reports that Trump had asked him to return for a second run as U.S. trade representative, which a person called absolute bullshit, Litzinger is still, of course, in the running for another senior economic positions, including Commerce Treasury, or even another senior White House advisor role. Any of these roles would allow him now exclusive influence over the trade agenda, particularly if one of his own deputies is, of course, named trade chief, as is expected by many now close to the transition. So we still do not know what is going to be happening, but I expect this guy, or at least maybe one of his cronies, as it said there, to be elected. So you need to watch out for Litzinger. If Litzinger gets elected to any senior White House role in the next coming couple of days, prepare for a very, very pro-tariff agenda to be massively pushed by this White House. So for months, the inner circle have now been preparing for trade and economic policy action for the administration's first 100 days. So we know this is coming almost instantly with the first 100 days. So anything from like January the 20th right up to really March, April, we could see what could happen here. Another source said now to pay a plethora for expected new tax cuts. Oh yeah, this is the other big approach, that all these tariffs are going to be seen as a way to pay for a huge waves of tax cuts, that they are going to cut a load of taxes, and instead all these tariffs are now going to pay for like all these tax cuts, which again, good luck with that because that could have some bizarre effects on tax income. So this quote said, "I think that it's something that between the White House and the Congress will want to now discuss ways to work together on all these things," said Representative Johnson Mueller, a Republican co-chair of the House Select Committee on the Chinese Communist Party, when asked about the universal tariff. At least more buy-in from Congress would be very key for Litzinger to deliver on a more aggressive tariff strategy than Trump has been touted on the campaign trail. And that could be true as well. You've been hearing a lot of these MAGA people really push for the fact Trump has a mandate. Trump has a mandate. Or even if you've really been paying attention to these guys, Trump has a mandate to start a trade war. So many of these people who vote for Trump don't care if a trade war gets started. As far as they're concerned, they knew he was going to do that. Also, we could see additional action taken against the European Union, which Trump has described as a mini China. And Litzinger has also accused of enjoying now unfair trade advantages against the US. Since the day after the election, there have been both now lots of meetings in the West Palm Beach, and I think those are now likely to continue, said one person with knowledge of Trump's transition planning. Now that the campaign is over, the conversation will now switch gears. So I think those conversations over policy and sequencing are really just starting. So, yeah, I think we are going to see these be pushed. I think we are going to see these trade tariffs be pushed. I think it's obvious this is going to happen. This isn't going to be something that Trump does. Well, maybe he does in executive action, and then, as was said here, he again gets Congress to go and cement these tariffs. Because if you remember, if these tariffs succeed, and this allows, like, the free market fundamentalist wet dream to, cut taxes because of these tariffs. Bear in mind, this is the exact almost opposite reverse of Brexit in many ways, that our own free market fundamentalists try to pursue of saying, oh no, you don't understand. If we have like 0% tariffs, we'll get all this growth and then we can lower taxes. It is the exact same, but in reverse. We raise tariffs and then we get to cut taxes. It's just it's the almost a different flavor of free market fundamentalism that is being pushed here. How likely is this going to be working out? Well, honestly, you only have to look at what the economic consensus has come from the vast majority of economists, that this is not going to end well, that this could be an absolute disaster in terms for the US economy, a complete and utter disaster of epic proportions. Bear in mind, you want a good example? Look what's going on in Venezuela. It's not good. It's not good at all. But somehow he still remains in power, at least for the time being. But yeah, these are not going to be good. These are not going to be good at all. And once again, if you've got this combining with these tariffs, with the video we made yesterday of wanting to bully the UK into accepting a US UK free trade deal, which again would not be good for the UK, any UK industries at all, like completely. Because you've also got to remember now the massive subsidy regime that is gone on, that got unleashed by Joe Biden, the Inflation Reduction Act, the CHIPS Act, that unleashed a ton of subsidies across there. You're going to get a lot of UK companies going, well, we'll just nip over there then instead. Bear in mind that has been a problem since Joe Biden actually put in those acts, but unfortunately our politicians have just not been bothering to pay attention or even do anything about it. But then again, we did that about Rishi Sunak's answer, which again, the chips industries that are still located here in the UK just went, you're offering us nothing, whereas there's all this stuff on the American menu that we could go for. So, as always, thank you very much. Let me know what you think down below. But I've been saying it for a while. I think this is the beginning of the end of Brexit. It is completely proven the dreams and wants and desires of the Brexiteers completely wrong. Their predictions of how free trade would work, how the world would develop, that ain't happening. So, as always, let me know what you think down below. And of course, as always, click the like, click the share button on your way out. And of course, we'll see you all next time.